This is a special NewsVision report, Election 2020.
Hello, welcome to the special NewsVision coverage of Election 2020. I'm Samantha Cheney. NewsVision, of course, for broadcast journalism at Howard University, is bringing you complete coverage of this year's historic election. It's election across the country and polls are closed in 6 states. Indiana, Kentucky, New Hampshire have already started to report votes of President Trump in a slight lead. But Florida has over 87% of votes reported, with Vice President Joe Biden and President Trump running neck and neck. There are 35 Senate seats up for grab, and in several states, many Democrats hope to upend Republican strongholds. Before the polls opened, more than 102 million people cast their vote. That is 2/3 of the total votes cast in 2016. Will President Trump be reelected, or will Democratic nominee for Vice President Joe Biden become the next president of the United States? NewsVision has your updates. There is no question about how passionate Americans have been to cast their votes before Election Day. Due to coronavirus voter fraud and other concerns, over 100 million Americans took part in some of early voting. Still, many chose to cast their ballots in person on Election Day. One of those places was right here in the nation's capital. NewsVision Jaquetta Williams joins me now with more. Hi, Jaquetta.
Hi, Samantha. COVID-19 has forced Americans to rethink the way they vote and have their voices heard. Despite the new ways to participate in the election, many people in the Washington, D.C. area chose not to vote in person on Election Day. I was out when the polls opened at 7 a.m.
From Columbia Heights to Connecticut Avenue, when polling centers opened in the district at 7 a.m., this is what we found: literally no one in line. But according to this poll worker, that isn't a bad thing.
Last weekend, the big turnout for early voting was, amazing, and I think a lot of people came out more for early voting rather than, Election Day. So I feel confident that DC's turnout has, increased from the last election, which was 2018.
According to the U.S. Elections Project, as of November 2nd, the day before Election Day, 99 million Americans have voted early, for many reasons. From voter suppression in large swing states to COVID-19 restrictions like social distancing, the election has looked different now than any other.
Due to the historically large amount of early voting, D.C. polling centers have been empty all day. From 7 a.m. to noon, the scene has stayed the same.
For voters who did choose to vote in person today, there are 95 vote centers open. With polling centers open until 7 p.m., it is expected that more voters will show to cast their ballot in person this evening.
I expect maybe to be more people to come out, but that's what I hope.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., for NewsVision, I'm Jaquetta Williams.
Thanks, Jaquetta. In D.C., all registered voters received mail-in ballots in early October. It was a part of the Vote to Safe D.C. campaign. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, for voters who did choose to vote in person today, there were 95 vote centers open. As some rushed to the polls to vote in person this morning, others took a moment to recognize and celebrate the potentially historic day. If Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are elected, the senator will embody many firsts in this country, including becoming the first woman so close to the presidency. NewsVision Julia Rang traveled to Harris's beloved alma mater to get more.
On the morning of 2020's historic Election Day, Howard University's administration came together for the Changemaker celebration. The event was meant to celebrate and recognize the achievements of notable alumni who have used their schooling from the historically Black university to make a difference in the world. Speakers, including Howard University President Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, reflected on alumna and U.S. Senator Kamala Harris's historic achievement of becoming the first Black and Asian woman to serve as the vice presidential candidate on a major party ticket.
What she has done is good for not just Howard, but for the black community. She has shown that Howard graduates are a force to be reckoned with. And she has demonstrated that those who make their way through the Mecca, those who successfully traverse the hilltop, can make it anywhere in the world.
Senator Harris has the possibility of achieving many firsts today. The first Black and Asian American vice president, the first Indian American of any gender and graduate of historically Black university on a major party ticket, and arguably the most important landmark of all, the first woman in 244 years to rise to the second highest office in the United States of America.
Harris's classmate and sorority sister spoke to what it would mean for young girls if Harris is elected.
Senator Harris is an example, hopefully, not just to young women of color, but to young women in general.
For Howard University's NewsVision, I'm Julia Wang.
Howard University President Wayne A.I. Frederick also reminded students, alumni, and other viewers that no matter who wins today's election, Howard University students leave him with great optimism for the future. And next up, we have a special guest interview with a widely acclaimed network news anchor as we discuss the aftermath of what today's election will look like, and our guest on how Americans across the nation will react to election results.
From sunup to sundown, NewsVision has you covered. NewsVision is the capstone course for broadcast journalism at Howard University. From election coverage to campus updates and local government affairs, we will battle anything to get the story to you accurately and proficiently in a timely manner. No matter the danger or the difficulty, we continue to report to uphold democracy. So check out NewsVision for the latest stories.
You can't do much worse than rock bottom.
Remember that our vision is your vision.
Newsrooms across the nation have been working tirelessly for months in anticipation of today's election. MSNBC anchor Joy Reid reports nightly on her show, The Readout. She took the time to speak with me on election eve. I asked her about what she thinks and expects to see from Republicans and Democrats following the release of election results. She voiced her concern that many people have, and she also spoke on past election trends, what we've learned, and what she will be looking for.
I would say that we should actually be concerned about civil unrest, about the ways in which particularly supporters of the president will react to the results of the election, in part because of the way that they've been acting in the lead up to the election. So we know that there have been at least one alleged attempt to run a Biden bus off of the road. There have been incidents of blocking roadways, incidences of caravans and threatening behavior, using cars to intimidate people, driving these caravans through Black neighborhoods. And so there's been some generally intimidating behavior. And I think that that's caused both the FBI and also local authorities in New York and in DC, et cetera, to really start to worry that there could actually be a violent reaction to a Trump loss. On the other side, in terms of Joe Biden, I think that because all of the polls and all the data show a high likelihood of Biden winning, that I think if he were not declared the winner, I think that you could see a lot of marches. I think you could see a lot of developments in terms of demonstrations in the streets. But for the most part, what we've seen is that Biden supporters are not armed. They're not carrying AR-15s and they're not doing violent behavior. But I think that you'll see people in the streets if Biden is not the winner. Well, we're talking about really sticking to the numbers, to the data, to what we know, to the history, and to the way that these states are playing out. Because, at the end of the day, even in 2016, it's not that the polls were wrong. It's that the national polls were giving a high probability to Hillary Clinton winning, but some of the state polls in places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin were off.
And I just want to know, as a journalist yourself and as a Black woman, what kind of advice would you give to a class full of other Black women? There's 6 of us, as we cover the election for the first time.
I would say, pay attention to the ways in which the African American vote is highly influential, particularly in states that are becoming swing states. For instance, in Pennsylvania, the low turnout of Black voters helped swing the state toward Trump in 2016. Do the Philadelphia suburbs go back the other way and tip the state back in the Democratic direction? So I think watch Black voters and the way that they're turning out, particularly with all the voter suppression in places like North Carolina, in places like Georgia, which is becoming a real true swing state after what Stacey Abrams did in terms of registering voters. And then I would also pay attention to the way that Latinx voters are also doing the same thing in states like Arizona and in Texas. So I think you watch voters of color and you'll really get a sense of where these elections are going.
And I really enjoyed that conversation. Whether walking, riding, or strolling to the polls, Americans are finding unconventional ways to exercise their constitutional right to vote.
Election Day has finally arrived, and while voters are heading to the polls, how they will get there is news within itself. A leading topic of concern during this year's presidential election is voter suppression. While many Americans would like to exercise their right to vote, some simply do not have a way to get there. Transportation companies like Lyft, Lime, Bird, and Uber are providing free or discounted rides.
Anytime you're removing barriers to voting, different things that people need in a low-cost way, then I think it's a good thing to do.
While many voters have already casted their ballots by mail, some are heading out to the polls to vote on Election Day. Transportation companies like Capital Bike Share are offering free rides so you can pedal to the polls.
Organizations like the Collective PAC and Vote to Live have created partnerships with the target to register and mobilize 250,000 Black voters across the nation.
We're very proud of Vote to Live in the Collective's partnership with Lyft because it's honestly the best promo out there. Like you might see some rides 25% off, or you might see some rides that are a $5, $10 discount. What we offer is a $30 promo.
While it has been determined that young Americans will play a significant role in this election, many of them have found voting harder than necessary.
I requested my absentee ballot in the beginning of October, and to this day, I still have not received it.
Despite the many challenges that voters have faced, they still believe it was all worth it.
According to a report by Harvard and Boston University, 66% of voters with access to a car voted in the 2018 election, while just 36% of voters without a car voted. And it's no secret that most of the 100 million Americans who participated in early voting were Democrats. Many cite concerns about COVID-19 online as their reasons for voting early. While Democrats took the lead in early voting, Republicans hope to close the gap in person. And that includes Black Republicans. NewsVision reporter Corinne Jones has more.
There are approximately 30,000 registered Republican voters in D.C. And while that's just a 6% minority, many of them feel their vote still matters and prefer to vote in person. Here at Cleveland Park Library in Ward 3, a conservative voter tells us about their decision to vote in person.
I figured that they would be taking ample precautions, and I also figured that most people would vote by mail or early, and so there wouldn't be a long line.
For President Donald Trump to get reelected in office, political strategist Jen O'Malley Dillon says that Trump's key to victory is to win the swing state of Florida, with conservative voters confident of this happening.
All Democrats will let it appear like the Democrats are winning, but when everything is done, you will find that the Republicans are the ones that are ahead.
While 84% of African American voters remain solidly Democrat, just 8% of Black voters identify with the Republican Party.
Despite the backlash the president has received regarding his comments about minorities and his vague support for white nationalist groups, political commentator Armstrong Williams says being a black Republican and a Trump supporter is a freedom black people should celebrate.
Power. Why is it that the media and your community hold you to a standard that you can't associate with someone because you deem them to be racist? That to me is not freedom. They're limiting your freedom.
While multiple reports show President Trump may lose many of his supporters from 2016, others strongly believe he will keep his winning hand. Reporting from Washington, D.C. for NewsVision, I'm Corinne Jones.
In 2016, President Trump won over 13% of black male voters. We will see if his administration efforts to gain the black vote paid off as the election results begin to pour in. And next up, we discuss other pressing election issues: black voter turnout, voter suppression, and intimidation. Stay with us.
Once I stepped on campus, I just felt like I belonged there. Howard is definitely like a place where I've learned to become myself and like fully just like break out of my shell in a sense and like figure out who I am and who I want to be and where I want to be. And that's just like from like, you know, just being indulged in the culture of Howard and being surrounded by like, you know, black students that are being successful and black creatives. I'll hold on to the memories forever, and that whatever I did learn at Howard or whatever I can take away from Howard will follow me throughout the rest of my careers.
Black voters across the nation are concerned about voter suppression, intimidation, and integrity. Here at Howard University, the Ronald Walters Election Command Center takes charge. The Election Day Command Center is providing real-time updates to combat voter suppression and disinformation amongst voters. NewsVision reporter Kyra Nicole Grant has the story.
On a historic National Election Day, the Ronald Walters Election Day Command Center at Howard University is monitoring the black vote and ensuring fair practices on the ground from home. The Command Center has monitored the election since 2012, and although this year's Command Center is held virtually through Zoom, participating organizations like Black Youth Vote are making sure that voters can be heard from across the country.
Black Youth Vote, our goal is to make sure that we are reaching out to the hard-to-reach youth. We're trying to, we're making sure that we're even reaching the ones that are registered but just aren't voting.
The Command Center receives real-time information regarding voter turnout, issues at the polls, and black voter intimidation in key battleground states.
We have had a lot of issues with poll pads. There was an update made to some of those poll pads, and it has created a problem so that it wouldn't issue a card for the voter to actually vote on the electronic, the ballot marking devices.
Student Sydney Johnson is growing the presence of the Command Center for Black voters virtually through live tweeting and updates.
Right now, we're getting different reports from the different branches, and they're kind of telling us that, this polling location had to switch to paper ballots. This polling location has people standing outside, kind of committing voter intimidation.
The Ronald Walters Election Day Command Center at Howard University has monitored black voter participation for nearly 8 years. Although this command center is virtual this year, they are reporting real-time reports of voter suppression, voter intimidation, and other voting conditions in key battleground states across the country. For NewsVision, I'm Carter Nicole Grant.
As a result of the presidential election begin to roll in, the Command Center will continue to report and track voter issues among black voters. They are bringing in live updates from key battleground states such as Arizona, Florida, Georgia, and Pennsylvania as we track the race to 270. Polling places in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia opened at 7 a.m. for voters to cast their ballots in what many people are calling a historic election. But some volunteers did more than just vote. NewsVision's Chandler Carter joins me with more. Hi, Chandler.
Hi, Samantha. In 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti, World Central Kitchen opened. Today, this nonprofit went to the streets of Washington, D.C. to provide sandwiches, water, and hand sanitizer to voters and poll workers at Capital One Arena and the Entertainment Sports Arena in Southeast D.C. Take a look.
Oh, yeah, actually. I appreciate you. Yeah, of course.
Check for the Poll is a nonpartisan effort to alleviate some of the challenges that come with elections during a pandemic. We've been doing this since day one of early voting, and we have seen how the lines have gone from 90-minute wait to now where we really don't have anyone on lines.
World Central Kitchen is no stranger to providing meals in time of need. Chef for the Polls, their initiative has been using the power of food to bring the community together. And for some lighthearted election news, this weekend, and many young girls dressed up as the woman they look up to. Political figures have always been a popular trend for the choice of the annual Costume Fest, and this year, Kamala Harris was a popular choice. Many young girls were ready for their photo op with their blazers and their famous Chuck Taylors on. Mina Harris, the vice presidential candidate's sister, even talked on Twitter to discuss how representation matters. And thank you for tuning in to our special all-inclusive Election Day coverage as we track the race to 270. I'm Samantha Cheney, and on behalf of all of us here at NewsVision, thank you for watching.
NewsVision, brought to you by Howard University School of Communications.